Adrian Holt arrived at the headquarters earlier than usual, hoping for a calm morning. But the moment he stepped out of the elevator, he felt something off, like the entire building was holding its breath. Everyone pretended to work, but their eyes drifted toward him and then away just as fast. Secret glances, stiff smiles, nervous whispers, he noticed all of it. He wasn't paranoid. He was experienced. Years at the top had taught him how to sense trouble before anyone spoke a word. Today, the air felt heavier, thicker, almost warning him to turn around and walk back home. But he didn't. He squared his shoulders, pushed down the uneasy feeling, and headed to the boardroom. The door was already open. That alone was unusual. Board meetings always began with protocol doors closed, chairs positioned carefully, security standing by. But now everything felt staged, like a scene prepared before the main actor walked in. Papers were stacked too neatly. People were seated too early. The large windows let in bright morning light. But even the sunshine felt cold against the polished table. Adrian scanned the faces. Some looked down. Some pretended to read documents. Others forced polite smiles, the kind that cracked at the edges. They knew something he didn't, and it wasn't good. Then he saw her. Maya Reed sat near the end of the table, arms crossed lightly over a folder, her expression calm but her eyes soft with concern. She had joined the company only 3 months ago as the board's legal advisor. Young, educated, sharp, but gentle in the way she spoke and carried herself. She wasn't like the others who moved through power like it was a weapon. Maya moved through rooms with quiet thought, watching more than speaking. Adrian respected that, maybe even admired it. When she looked up at him now, their eyes met for a second too long. She didn't hide the worry in her gaze. She didn't pretend like the others. She simply watched him like someone watching a train heading toward a broken track. He took his seat at the head of the table, trying to ignore the growing unease. The chairman, Martin Lewis, cleared his throat dramatically, tapping his pen against the polished wood. He was in his late 60s, gray-haired, always acting as though he carried the entire world on his shoulders. Adrian had trusted him for years. Today the trust felt like a thread starting to snap. "Let's begin," Lewis said, trying to sound neutral. They moved quickly through routine topics, but everyone rushed through them, barely discussing anything. It felt like they were racing toward something. Adrian leaned back, waiting. He knew they weren't here for budget updates or quarterly goals. Something bigger was coming, and it arrived sooner than he expected. "Next item," Lewis said. He didn't look at Adrian. Motion to remove Adrian Holt from the position of CEO. The words floated in the air for a moment, almost unreal. Adrian blinked slowly, as if giving the room a chance to explain the joke. Nobody laughed. His name echoed, sharp and heavy, slicing through the cold morning like a blade. For a moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, hands rose. "Approved," said one board member. "Approved," another followed, not even looking up. "Approved," a third whispered, almost ashamed. Adrian stared at them silently. Every hand lifted felt like a small betrayal stabbing into him. These were people he hired, people he guided through crises, people he defended when investors wanted new blood. And now they turned on him like he was a stranger. His throat tightened. He wasn't surprised they disagreed with him sometimes. Leadership always had conflict. But this was something else. This was a plan. A hidden agreement. A decision made long before today. Only one person moved differently. Maya. She didn't raise her hand. Her face was pale, her fingers gripping the folder on her lap. Her lips pressed together like she was fighting to say something but wasn't allowed to. She looked at Adrian with an expression that held more emotion than words. "I'm sorry. I didn't want this. I tried to stop it." But before she could speak, the chairman snapped. Motion passed. The meeting moved forward as if nothing important happened. People shuffled papers. Someone coughed. Pens scratched across paper, pretending to take notes. Adrian felt strangely outside his own body, as if watching the scene through glass. He didn't hear the rest of the agenda. He didn't care. His mind was stuck on the moment those hands rose. each one breaking something inside him. When the meeting ended, everyone stood up quickly, eager to leave before Adrian could question them. They acted like thieves escaping a house they robbed. Nobody wanted to face him. Nobody wanted to explain. Adrian remained seated, staring at the empty chair across from him. He felt more hurt than angry. He had given everything to this company. He had sacrificed relationships, sleep, health, even dreams he once had outside of business. And for what? To be pushed out like an unwanted guest? Footsteps approached. He didn't expect who they belonged to. Maya stood beside him, her expression serious, almost scared. She leaned slightly toward him and whispered in a voice trembling with urgency, "You need to check the filings. Today, please, before they do." Her words were soft, but they hit him harder than the vote. He turned to her, confused. "What filings?" She opened her mouth to explain, but stopped when she heard someone behind her. A board member walked by, pretending not to eavesdrop. Maya stepped back quickly, her eyes locked on Adrian's, silently begging him to trust her. "Just do it," she whispered again, firmer this time. "It's important." He wanted to ask more, but she was already walking away, her steps fast and tense, as if she feared being seen talking to him for too long. Adrian watched her disappear down the hallway, her long hair swaying behind her. Her shoulders stiff with worry. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Not just with the vote, but with the company itself. Adrian left the boardroom slowly, his thoughts spinning. People avoided him as he walked through the hall. Some looked guilty. Some looked relieved. Some simply pretended he didn't exist. He didn't blame them. People showed their true faces during power shifts. He reached his office, opened the door, and felt a rush of anger wash over him. Boxes had already been placed beside the desk, as if someone expected him to start packing immediately. His awards were removed from the walls. His certificates and photos were stacked carelessly on the table. They didn't even wait for him to leave. They acted like he was already gone. He sat at his desk, staring at the empty space where his career had lived for years. The hurt twisted deeper inside his chest. He wasn't just losing a job. He was losing the home he built with every drop of strength he had. He ran a hand through his hair, tired, heartbroken, and angry. But one memory stopped the spiral. Maya's whisper, "Check the filings. Before they do." Her voice echoed in his mind again and again, filling him with a new kind of fear. What had she seen? What was she trying to protect him from? Why did she look so terrified? He opened his laptop, but before he could begin, someone gently pushed the office door open. It was Maya again. Her eyes were soft, but filled with urgency. She stepped inside and quietly closed the door behind her. "Adrian," she whispered, "you don't have minutes. You have seconds." He stood up slowly. "Tell me what's happening." Maya walked closer, close enough that he could see the fear in her eyes and the determination beneath it. "They didn't just vote you out." "Shh," she said. "They tried to hide something from you. Something about the shares. Something they thought you'd never discover." She swallowed, pressing the folder against her chest like a shield. "I found it by accident. And if they know that I told you anything—" She paused, her breath shaky. Adrian stepped toward her, sensing genuine fear in her voice. "What did you find?" Maya hesitated. She looked down at the folder, then back at him. He saw conflict in her eyes, fear of the board, fear for her job, and something deeper he couldn't define. Something personal. "I can't tell you here," she whispered. "Too many ears. Too many cameras. You need to check the filings yourself today. As soon as I walk out, tell me why." "'Cause," she said, exhaling, "you're not supposed to be fired. Not legally. Not even close." She took one more step toward him, lowering her voice. "And because you own more than they want you to know." Adrian froze. "What?" Maya didn't answer. She simply placed the folder on his desk and turned toward the door. Before leaving, she looked at him again. Her eyes heavy with something unspoken worry, loyalty. Maybe even something tender he hadn't noticed before. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Trust me." Then she walked out. Adrian stared at the folder she left behind. His heartbeat quickened, not just from fear, but from the weight of whatever truth Maya had just given him. He stood there for a long moment, unsure if he wanted to open it. Betrayal hurt enough. Learning more might break him even deeper. But then he looked at the empty office around him and remembered the board's cold eyes, the raised hands, the silence when he needed loyalty. He pulled the folder closer and took a deep breath. Whatever was inside would change everything. He opened it. The first line he read made his stomach drop. He still owned the majority of the company. He blinked, shook his head, reread it, and felt the blood drain from his face. It didn't make sense. He had sold shares years ago. He remembered signing deals. He remembered letting go of equity to grow the company. But the documents here told another story: paperwork that was never filed, transfers that were never completed, agreements that were never officially processed. It was like someone pretended to take his shares without actually taking anything. Adrian sat at his desk, the folder Maya left still open in front of him. His mind was spinning faster than he could breathe. He kept rereading the first few pages, almost expecting to find a mistake, a typo, something that would prove it wasn't true. But every line screamed the same shocking fact. He still owned 80% of Holt Dynamics. The company he thought he had lost was still, in the eyes of the law, entirely his. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. He looked around at the empty office and realized how strange it felt. He had spent years filling this space with achievements, memories, milestones, and yet now it seemed hollow. The trophies, the certificates, even the framed photos had been removed or stacked carelessly on the side, like they meant nothing. The betrayal of the board still stung, but underneath that pain was a flicker of exhilaration. He had been underestimated, and underestimated people were dangerous. The knock at his office door startled him. It was soft but deliberate. Adrian looked up. It was Maya, again. Her presence had a strange effect on him. Every time she appeared, his racing thoughts slowed for a moment, as if her calm eyes could somehow anchor him in the chaos surrounding him. "Adrian," she said softly, almost hesitantly. Are you okay?" He didn't answer right away. He wanted to ask her everything, but he realized that would make him seem vulnerable. He had to be strategic. He had to act first, even while trying to contain the storm of emotions inside him. "You're not okay," she said, stepping closer. "And I can't tell you all of it here. Too many people know we're talking." Her eyes darted to the door, then back to him. And for a brief second, Adrian saw fear in her gaze. But fear was mixed with determination, something deeper, personal, and unshakable. He leaned back in his chair, his hands gripping the folder. "Tell me everything, Maya. Why didn't anyone do this before? Why didn't anyone stop them?" Maya took a deep breath, her voice low and urgent. "Because they were clever. They altered some board share records, hid paperwork, and assumed no one would notice. They thought you'd be gone for good, that no one would dig into the filings fast enough to catch the discrepancies." Adrian's heart raced. "And you caught it." "I did," she said, her tone quiet but firm. "I was reviewing documents for something else. I noticed inconsistencies. Some shares were listed as transferred, but legally, the transfers were never finalized. I tried to tell someone before this meeting, but they ignored me. I couldn't let them use it against you." Her hands trembled slightly as she placed another folder on his desk. Adrian leaned forward, sensing that this was more than just legal papers. It was the key to reclaiming everything he had built. The folder contained evidence of the board's manipulation: signatures forged, approvals faked, emails deleted. It was meticulous and terrifying. Adrian's mind raced. He had been betrayed, humiliated, but now the balance had shifted. For the first time in months, he felt power. Real power. And yet, underneath it all, strange warmth spread in his chest every time he looked at Maya. She had risked herself to protect him. She had chosen loyalty when it could have cost her everything. "Why?" he asked, his voice quieter than expected. "Why did you help me?" Maya hesitated. She looked away for a moment, then back at him. Her eyes softened, vulnerability breaking through her calm exterior. Because I couldn't watch them destroy the man who built this company. And because I care about you, Adrian, more than I should. Adrian blinked. Her words hit him like a shockwave. He had always respected Maya's intellect and judgment, but now he realized there was something deeper between them. Something tender, emotional, and undeniably real. But there was no time to dwell on it. The board had made their move, and the next steps had to be precise and fast. Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the hall. They were fast, urgent, and filled with anger. Adrian instinctively moved closer to the desk, positioning himself to block the view of the folder. Maya froze, her eyes wide with alarm. "We need to act," he whispered, his voice low but steady. "Hide this. Don't let them see it." Maya nodded quickly, stepping back toward the wall, her pulse visible in the tension of her shoulders. They watched as Chairman Lewis stormed into the office, his face red with fury. "Adrian," Lewis barked, "you need to leave immediately. This is highly irregular." Adrian did not flinch. He felt a calm rise in him, a slow but unstoppable confidence. For years he had built this empire from nothing. He had survived competitors, investors, and betrayals. And now, after being publicly humiliated, he finally understood that his true power was not the title, not the office, but the ownership. "No," Adrian said quietly. "You need to leave." The chairman froze, taken aback. His face shifted from anger to confusion to panic as Adrian slid the folder across the desk. Toward him. "These are the verified filings," Adrian said. "Everything you tried to hide, everything you manipulated. It's all here." Lewis's face paled. He reached out hesitantly, as if afraid the folder might bite him. His voice cracked. "How? How is this possible?" Adrian leaned back, calm but sharp. "Because you underestimated me. You assumed I wouldn't notice. You assumed you could erase me. But you forgot one thing. The law never forgets, and the truth never disappears." Behind the half-open door, Maya held her breath. Her heart raced, but she didn't move. She watched Adrian, all mixed with admiration in her eyes. The man who had been betrayed, humiliated, and ousted just hours ago was now standing taller, more powerful than anyone in the room. He wasn't angry in the usual way. He wasn't lashing out blindly. He was precise, controlled, unstoppable. Lewis's voice shook. This can't be legal." Adrian smiled faintly. "It is. And now everything you tried to take from me belongs to me again." The room went silent, filled with the weight of shock. Other board members shuffled uneasily, whispering among themselves, glancing at the documents. Realizing that the tide had turned completely. Their carefully orchestrated plan had failed spectacularly. Maya stepped forward slightly, still cautious, still aware of the danger, but also a subtle relief in her eyes. She whispered, "You've got them now. You can take control." Adrian nodded slightly, his eyes never leaving Lewis's face. "Yes, and I will. I will reverse every illegal action. I will correct every manipulation. And those of you who voted me out, you will face the consequences." The chairman's face went red again, now with fear and disbelief. He opened his mouth, then closed it, realizing that for the first time he had no leverage. No threat, no path to undo what Adrian had just discovered. The room seemed smaller, the walls closing in on them, while Adrian's presence grew larger than it had ever been. Maya stepped closer to Adrian, still cautious, still watching the reactions of everyone in the room. But her heart was lighter. She had helped him. She had chosen loyalty, truth, and courage. And now, the man she had quietly admired, maybe even cared for, was reclaiming his empire. Adrian glanced at her, a brief flicker of emotion passing through his usually stoic expression. He didn't speak. He simply nodded, acknowledging her role, acknowledging her bravery. Acknowledging the quiet bond that had formed between them in the chaos. Lewis finally found his voice. trembling with fear. You can't do this. You don't have Adrian, cut him off. I already do. The filings are legal, verified, and nothing you tried will change that. You built your little scheme on lies. But the truth always comes back. The room fell into stunned silence. Some board members buried their faces in their hands. Others stared at Adrian in disbelief. Everyone had underestimated him. Everyone had thought he was vulnerable. But now he had risen from humiliation to triumph in a matter of hours. Maya watched him, her chest tightening with an unfamiliar mix of fear, pride, and something tender. She had risked everything to protect him, and it had paid off. But she also realized something else, something personal. Adrian was not just powerful now. He was magnetic. He was alive in a way that drew people in. And she had seen it when no one else had. Adrian's hands rested on the table, still holding the folder, still in control. Yet his gaze found hers across the room. In that brief moment, unspoken words passed between them: gratitude, admiration, connection. A quiet, fragile spark that neither dared to name, but both felt deeply. The chaos of the room continued around them. But Adrian felt calm, focused, alive. He had been betrayed, yes. But now he was armed with the truth, armed with power, armed with the knowledge that nothing could stop him, not fear, not lies, not betrayal. He looked back at Lewis and said, quietly, almost casually, I suggest you leave now, before this gets worse for you. The chairman nodded shakily, his pride shattered, his authority meaningless. He turned and left, the board members following reluctantly, whispering and murmuring, realizing that the game had changed. When the door finally closed, Adrian turned toward Maya. She met his eyes, her expression a mixture of relief, pride, and something unspoken but intense. You did it, he said softly, almost a whisper, but full of admiration. She smiled faintly, her cheeks warming. We did it. Tyrion nodded, understanding her meaning, feeling the weight of the moment. They had survived betrayal. They had uncovered truth. And together they had reclaimed what was rightfully his dot. And yet, beneath the triumph, Adrian knew something else was stirring, something tender, emotional. Adrian woke the next morning with a strange calmness he hadn't felt in months. The chaos of yesterday, the betrayal, the vote. The whispers of disloyalty had passed, replaced by a new awareness of power. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he had the world under his control. And yet, it wasn't arrogance that filled him. It was clarity. The company he had built, every late night, every sacrifice, every heartbreak, still belonged to him. And now he had the chance to take it back properly. Maya arrived early, standing quietly in the doorway of his office. Her presence had become both comforting and magnetic. She didn't speak immediately. She simply watched him, letting him feel the support, the quiet strength she offered without needing words. Adrian felt his chest tighten slightly as he noticed the concern still lingering in her eyes. She had risked her career to protect him, to make sure the truth would reach him before the board could twist it into something irreversible. That risk, that courage, it made him see her differently, not just as an ally, but as someone who mattered more than he had expected. Are you ready? She asked finally, her voice low, almost hesitant. Adrian nodded. I've never been more ready in my life. He picked up the folder she had helped him uncover, feeling the weight of the truth in his hands. Every paper represented years of scheming by those who had underestimated him. Every signature a reminder of their arrogance. Today, he would make sure they understood that mistakes like this had consequences. They walked together toward the boardroom. The tension in the hallways was palpable. Whispers stopped when people saw Adrian pass. Phones were silenced. Even the cleaning staff seemed to hold their breath. News of the documents and the ownership revelation had spread faster than anyone could imagine. The board members were waiting, trying to appear composed. But the anxiety radiating from them was impossible to hide. When Adrian entered the room, the shift in energy was immediate. Everyone had expected him to be desperate, angry, maybe even defeated. Instead, he walked in calm, measured, confident. His posture was perfect, his gaze steady. He carried the folder not as a threat, but as proof, undeniable and legal. The room seemed smaller under his presence, the walls pressing closer to contain the tension he radiated. Chairman Lewis tried to assert control, clearing his throat and attempting a stiff smile. "Adrian," he said, voice wavering, "this is highly irregular." We were expecting. Adrian held up his hand. "Sit." The single word, quiet yet commanding, silenced the room. Board members shifted uncomfortably, exchanging anxious glances. No one had ever seen Adrian command attention like this in a meeting that was supposed to humiliate him. He placed the folder in the center of the table. "These are the verified ownership filings," he said, his voice calm but heavy with authority. "As of today, I legally own 80% of Holt Dynamics. Every attempt to remove me, every manipulation, every falsified record is documented and invalid." A murmur ran through the room. Heads lowered. Papers shuffled. Some board members whispered to each other, trying to process the reality of the situation. Their carefully plotted plan had been completely undone in a single day. The air was thick with disbelief and fear. Lewis's face went pale. This can't be. It's impossible." Adrian's eyes met his. "It's very possible. And it's legal. You underestimated me. You assumed I wouldn't see through your schemes. You thought I would accept being pushed out quietly. But the truth is stronger than lies, and it always comes back." Maya stepped slightly closer, though still near the wall. She watched him, her chest rising and falling, her heart caught between relief and admiration. She had protected him, and now she was witnessing his quiet, controlled triumph. The admiration in her gaze was unmistakable, but so was something else, a warmth. A flutter of emotions she had tried to hide. Adrian continued, his voice steady, measured, and sharp. "I will reverse every illegal action. All those who voted me out will be held accountable. And the company I built from the ground up will remain intact under my leadership." Lewis tried again to speak, but his voice cracked under the weight of reality. You can't do this." You don't have." Adrian cut him off with a soft, almost casual tone. "I already do. Everything is verified. Every paper, every record. The law is on my side. And nothing you tried to hide will change that." The other board members looked around, some collapsing slightly in their chairs, some staring at Adrian with wide eyes. Shock mixed with fear, the realization of their failure sinking in. The energy in the room was chaotic, but Adrian remained calm, almost serene. He didn't shout. He didn't yell. He let the evidence, the truth, and his presence speak for him. Finally, Lewis looked away, his face pale and trembling. He had lost control entirely. The chairman who had tried to orchestrate Adrian's removal now found himself powerless. His authority had crumbled in front of everyone, replaced by Adrian's unshakable presence. Maya's eyes never left him. Adrian glanced at her briefly, a faint flicker of gratitude passing through his calm exterior. No one else had stood for him. No one else had risked their career to protect him. And now she was here, witnessing his reclamation. Sharing the triumph silently but profoundly, Adrian leaned forward slightly, placing his hands firmly on the table. "This meeting is over. I suggest you all leave. Consider this your warning and your chance to reconsider your actions." The board shuffled nervously. Chairs scraped against the floor. Lewis whispered something incoherent, his pride shattered, before finally turning and walking out. One by one, the others followed, murmuring apologies and excuses, knowing there was nothing they could do. They had been outmaneuvered, and they knew it. When the room was empty, Adrian exhaled slowly. The weight of the confrontation lifted, leaving a quiet satisfaction. He had reclaimed his empire, corrected the injustices, and faced those who doubted him with truth and authority. Maya stepped forward, her eyes softening as she finally approached him. "Adrian, it's done," she said. Her voice carried relief, pride, and an unspoken intimacy that neither of them had yet named. He turned to her, allowing himself a small smile. "We did it," he said, echoing her earlier sentiment. "You helped me save everything. I can't thank you enough." Her cheeks flushed slightly, but she held his gaze. "I didn't help you for thanks," she whispered. "I did it because I knew you deserved it. And because I care about you." Adrian felt a warmth in his chest, an emotion more powerful than triumph, more delicate than relief. It was admiration, longing, and something tender that had been growing quietly over the past months. He stepped closer to her, their proximity electric but restrained. "Maya, you were right to trust me. And his voice faltered for a moment, the weight of confession making his words heavy. "I care about you, too." Her breath caught. She looked down, then back at him, uncertainty and hope mingling in her eyes. Adrian reached gently, lifting her chin, meeting her gaze with an intensity that was both commanding and gentle. "This isn't just about the company anymore," he said softly. "It's about everything we've risked, everything we've survived, and everything we can build together." Maya's eyes shimmered with unspoken emotion. Her lips parted slightly, and she took a tentative step closer. "Are you serious?" she whispered. Adrian smiled, a mixture of relief and promise. "Absolutely. And I want you by my side. Not just in this fight, but in everything that comes next." The hallway lights above them seemed to flicker softly, bathing them in a warm glow. The chaos of the board, the tension of the vote, the fear of betrayal, all of it faded in that moment. They were alone in their shared victory, their connection stronger than any legal document or corporate maneuver. Maya finally smiled fully, the tension leaving her shoulders. "Then I'm staying," she said softly, her voice full of conviction. "Every step, every fight, every challenge." Adrian reached out, taking her hand. The contact was gentle but electrifying. "Then let's rebuild," he said, his voice calm but filled with quiet fire. "Together." The building, once filled with whispers of fear and betrayal, now felt lighter. The empire Adrian had built was secure again. But more importantly, he had found an ally, a confidant, and perhaps something more in Maya. Their bond, forged in chaos and courage, was unspoken but undeniable. For the first time in a long while, Adrian smiled fully, not just at victory, but at possibility. The company was his. The power was his. But more than that, the trust, loyalty, quiet love he felt for Maya were something no one could ever take away. And as they stood together in the empty boardroom, holding hands, Adrian knew one simple truth. This was just the beginning. The empire was secure, the board subdued. But the story of him and Maya, the partnership, the loyalty, the growing affection was only starting to unfold. The sun streamed through the windows, warm and bright, reflecting off polished surfaces, casting a gentle light over them. Adrian felt alive, whole, and finally in control not just of his company, but of the future. And for the first time in a long time, he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Together, they had survived betrayal, uncovered truth. Thane reclaimed what was theirs. And now, standing side by side, Adrian and Maya were ready to build something stronger, not just for the company, but for the bond that had grown between them, a bond forged in fire, trust, and quiet courage. The boardroom was empty. The war for control was over.